Hello and welcome. Welcome. Thank you all for I'm sure you have busy schedules, but a lot of you were waiting well before 1:30. So thank you for showing up and being here. You're here properly tuned into Manager Book Club. If this is a surprise to you, you might be in the wrong Zoom meeting, but super excited to be chatting about Do Nothing today. I see some familiar faces, some new faces. So thank you for coming and super excited. We have enough folks to start doing our little check-ins. And so why don't we start with that? If you can please share a reaction or just share in the chat how you're feeling. Green is great, yellow okay, red terrible. And then please put in why you feel that particular way. I originally started this day out as yellow, and through these conversations, I've been feeling more and more green. This has been a very kind of vulnerable, open-hearted, kind of compassionate session, just day in and day out. We do 5 of them on book club part 1 days. And so, yeah, it's just been really exciting, and I'm super excited for this group. Sunny, I saw that you put up a yellow. Any particular reason why you're feeling yellow today? Oh, sorry, put you on the spot.
How did I put yellow? But yellow is actually most definitely what I am feeling. Um, I think that, we're making space for this, and this isn't the only thing that I've experienced today. So I'm hopeful to receive the same experience that you've had of having this transition me from yellow to green. But I'm also not going to put that expectation on myself. So if yellow still remains, that is more than fine and not a representation of the amazing value that I know this session will bring today.
Yeah, and I think just sitting with the yellow, processing that emotion is completely fine. Mark,
Mhm.
we actually have a few yellows in the group too, so thank you all for your honesty. Mark, you put down yellow. Any particular reason why?
I would just say, yeah, a lot going on at work, as I'm sure it's pretty relevant to also the book we're reading, right? Yeah, lots going on, QBRs this week, so lots to prepare for. But yeah,
Right.
feeling pretty good otherwise.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of folks actually have a lot of resonance with that too. Sarah, both Sarahs checked in yellow. Hopefully you feel green after this group, but also if you don't, that's completely okay, and we'll hold space for you too. Sarah Wessel, a lot going on outside your control. So sorry to hear, and hopefully it gets a little bit easier. Stacy, I saw you flashed a yellow earlier. Any particular reason why?
It's just a lot going on, but I was like, I'm still coming to this book club. Got through about half the chapters and I was like, nope, I'm coming. And so, yeah, and I found out a bunch of my best friends got laid off at a company today. So,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, it's just one of those Mercury's in
yeah,
retrograde, something's happening. So yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that sucks. Troy also feeling yellow. It's a yellow crew, and I'm so glad that we don't have one isolated yellow and everybody's kind of in the same boat together. So thank you for your vulnerability. Um, 11 meetings, Katie. At this point, if you do need to hop off, please let me know. We have recordings. Also, do not shame yourself if you didn't finish halfway through. 172 pages is a lot with a full-time job. We don't really care. It is a book club. You are supposed to be reading, but also we're not gonna, this is not school. So anyway, we have enough folks. I'm gonna proceed into today's regularly scheduled programming. And that starts with an introduction, especially if you don't know who the heck I am. My name is Yen. I'm co-founder of Kona. We created this little dog that you see in my background that lives in Slack and is basically the manager success platform and employee well-being platform for remote teams. We started this startup at UCLA, literally in a dorm room with me and 2 friends. We just agreed that remote work sucked and we tried to pursue it from there. This was back in 2019, and we just so happened to be in the right place, right time. So much so that it also introduced me to some amazing coworkers, including my lovely coworker, Monica, who's co-hosting with me. Monica, go ahead and take the floor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Managers Book Club. My name is Monica. I am based in Vienna, and I'm first marketer here at Kona. I am very passionate about leaderships, and I'm very passionate about books. I used to leave 20 people, and I read 100 books every year. So this is the perfect cross section for me to engage. And yes, if you see me looking down, that is because I'm making sure everything is set up correctly, everything is working, so I'm not ignoring you. I don't think you're ugly. I think you all look stunning. So I just need to look this way for a little bit, but have fun. Let me know if something's not working.
Amazing. And without further ado, we should also introduce our kind of third Kona. This is a part of the podcast where you have that kind of sweet talking NPR commercial. So I'm going to do my best impression of that. This book club is sponsored by Kona. Kona is the employee success platform in Slack. And just like that green, yellow, red that we just did, it allows you to do the same kind of check-in with teams. If you just saw that new Legend of Zelda game that came out, our team has been obsessed with it. We share images, GIFs, different types of things about Trader Joe's. We share that we went climbing and that we're feeling exhausted. And this basically allows our team spread across every single time zone to basically check in on each other and support one another. In addition, Kona checks in with us. And so after marking that I was overwhelmed, Kona, powered by kind of AI and stuff, checks in with me and gives me some tips. It slots in with benefits, pretty cool stuff. And that was the last of the little unsolicited commercial that you just heard. So let's move on to our regularly scheduled programming. So before we dive in, discussion rules, this entire part 1 section is really calling out the problem of workaholicism, hustle culture, etc. So this is a section of unlearning, and then part 2 is a lot more of the action. The unlearning bit sucks and it's uncomfortable, and I just want to name that and call that out right away. Please embrace the suck with us. Keep this in mind and know that there are some uncomfortable conversations that may touch close to our character or what we're used to. The second is please assume positive intent. We are in Zoom and calling from a bunch of different time zones and spaces. People may be kind of not able to say exactly what they mean. Just know that there's positive intent behind that. Also acknowledge, validate, create space for diverse perspectives, and raise your hand when you'd like to contribute or speak. Quick housekeeping, it just keeps a larger group like this from interrupting one another. You're all here because in some semblance of the form, you're all customer first leaders, customer facing or dealing with customers or people day in and day out. So you have some shared context, but a lot of diverse perspectives to bring to this awesome conversation. So again, busy schedule that's highly interactive for you today. You just saw that introduction. We're going to go into part 1 review. So going over the kind of key concepts of the book. After every single section, I have a question that I open up to the group. We can take about 2 or 3. After 3, I do have to kind of cut off. So just know that you might not be able to share, but you can share in the chat. And I try to make sure that everybody gets space to talk. Then we do a limiting beliefs workshop, which has been really powerful throughout today to be able to help you get to know one other person in your breakout room, but also share some things that are holding us back. And then finally, we do a manager roundtable. You bring an open question to the group and we try to address it as a little group. This will go until 2:30 on the West Coast. And so, yeah, super excited. Let's dive in. So let's start with part 1's review. And this is where we go into the kind of addressing the problem of overworking. Part 1, we open in the introduction saying this: we work feverishly to make ourselves happy. So why are we so miserable? Why do we measure our time in terms of efficiency instead of meaning? Why can't we just take a break? As somebody who's constantly asked, why can't you take a break, to myself all the time, this is a very powerful statement and it's crazy to see it written out. So let's talk first about Celeste's definition of the cult of efficiency. We answer work emails on a Sunday night. This is the opening of chapter 1. Punched me straight in the throat. Anybody here guilty of answering emails on a Sunday? Okay, I see some hands, some nods, some kind of guilty smiles. We read endless articles about how to hack our brains. We are members of the cult of efficiency and we're killing ourselves with productivity. So what does that mean? Cult of efficiency. It's defined in the book as a group whose members believe fervently in the virtue of constant activity, in finding the most efficient way to accomplish just about anything and everything. They are busy all the time. They take it on faith that their effort is saving time and making their lives better. And that is the kind of cult of efficiency. I'm a card-carrying member myself. And actually, though, it's built on this tenet that may not be true. So here's the first question for you. The cult of efficiency relies on a belief that following a rigorous schedule will improve your life. In what ways do we reinforce that? And what are the consequences of having this belief? Okay, 2 or 3 hands. Anybody want to be a brave soul and kick us off? Okay, amazing. Janella, go for it.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so growing up, so I was first generation American. My dad came over here, he joined the US Navy, I was born here, and it was all about being successful, meaning you couldn't be lazy, you had to get up early, you always had to be doing something to be able to actually accomplish anything. So, I mean, when that's drilled into you your entire life, it's really hard to not be that way.
Yeah. super, super accurate. And also just acknowledging the fact that the ways that we grow up to learn these different things. I'm Chinese American. I grew up learning that hard work is what makes us Chinese, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's hard to decouple that from our identity. Choi, go for it.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I always tell the story growing up. I never saw any repairman come to the house. My dad did everything, right? So I can recall only one person that came. So it's kind of the get it done mentality. Don't really depend on everybody, which you would think wouldn't make me a good manager, but apparently it does. All these years later. But I have this recurring voice in my head that says there's always work to be done. This is a loop. And so you just begin seeking it out versus trying to unplug from it. And so I find myself seeking it all the time, whether that's being highly responsive in Slack, which I love to be. So again, Saturdays and Sundays, aren't off limits since we work 7 days a week. Well, my team does. But presence is power, so I try to be present as much as possible.
Yeah, that adds a lot of pressures, and I really love everybody's vulnerability. We're very well aware that how we grew up, the examples we see in our parents and also our family structures, it really does influence how we show up even at work. Sunny, go for it.
I would love to focus on the consequences of this belief. I really feel that the hype around culture of efficiency really takes away the focus on the relationship that we can have with our nervous system. All of this information inside of our body, whenever our heart rate increases, whenever we're feeling tired, etc., the cult of efficiency really takes away the light on that conscious relationship with the nervous system. And then we start to set aside food over, a task, a workout, and movement whenever we're feeling tight and tense and need to release expression, even to the point where we may not speak our truth and what we actually need versus trying to be effective and efficient. So I would say that's the consequence that I see.
Yeah, really great points. And Celeste uses the word ruthlessness a lot in the book to describe this efficiency. It's in the name. Against everything else, you have to be efficient, even if it hurts you. So super great call out. Let's move to the next section of the kind of history. So it wasn't always like this. I think Celeste does a great job of showing how productivity is a modern concept, really. Certainly, we're mostly better off than the average European peasant in the 1600s, but we do, in general, work longer hours. That's an indisputable fact. And looking at the kind of research that Celeste presents us, slapping it all on a timeline, we can really see how recent this transition was and how transformative it was. Back in 449 BC, Athenians had 6 months of vacation holidays per year. They were working with the sunlight, and that was kind of the norm up until the Industrial Revolution. Then we have efficiency, meaning ratio of useful work to energy, the light bulb, self-made man, and you can just start to see how rapidly it speeds up. World War II drove women to the workforce. We start to dive into consumerism. We're buying fancy computers, and now the self-help industry is worth 13 billion. That's billion with a B. dollars. And so we can see that this construct of productivity, of self-worth being associated to busyness, that is very, very recent. And in the history of humankind, not a normal kind of inherent thing. So I want to ask this next question. For the last 300,000 years, Homo sapiens did not work 40 hours a week or more than 300 days a year. Our working habits drastically changed from the industrial age. Did this research surprise you? Is constant work actually a fundamental human concept? How did you react basically to the information presented, whether you read it, listened to it, or just saw it just now? Gentle reminder, I can take 2 or 3 hands. So yes, amazing. Go for it, Matt.
Thanks. I felt duped.
Great reaction.
It makes so much sense when you read this and think about it in reality. In another book, Sapiens, kind of brings up the same thing, and just we weren't meant for this. That's why we're struggling so hard against it. But it's very frustrating, and it's difficult to uncouple and unwind.
Yeah, definitely. Stacey.
It surprised me, and I just was like, kind of a little bit infuriating, just because like multiple countries are trying to like take a further step back, right? Increasing work hours, like what France just increased the retirement age, which means you have to work full time longer. And I have a 4.5-year-old, so like moving, like this is really concerning to me, right? And then this shows up in schools. Like I've heard about kindergartners having homework, right? And this just drives that home for me. And so it was infuriating. I already knew that this was sort of the case, but still it was even more so just sort of like,
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I kind of had to reread it because I felt both duped and shocked. Maybe not surprised because I know capitalism is capitalism, but still kind of like, holy crap. Like, I believe that this is how we've always been. I've been taught that progress is linear and that we're better off than we were before, but maybe we're not better off in all areas. And that's a really kind of scary question to ask. So, into the next. Polluted time and work-life balance. One of the most common adjectives used to describe the modern rockstar CEO is workaholic. It's usually intended as a compliment or a sign of respect. The empty desk beside you might belong to a coworker who apparently doesn't take the job as seriously. Dark thought written out that I just thought, but and was ashamed to kind of like admit that I was thinking this, but I think it's something that is pretty common to think about. And Celeste brings us this idea of polluted time, this phenomenon caused by having to handle work duties off hours, being on call, or even having to think carefully about work issues or problem solving while technically not on the job, that answering emails on a Sunday, staying up way past the typical call off time. One day, if it was just one day, it wouldn't be a problem. It'd just be like that weird one hard day that you had at work. But unfortunately, this is becoming normal and expected in order for us to succeed. And what happens is we have this concept of time is money. We work longer hours. We feel guilty about resting because we're not working. We burn out. And in order to seek respite from our burnout, we seek some life hack or immediate fix or some book that we can read to kind of pull us out of this entire burnout sequence. And then boom, we're right back in it. So when it comes to curing burnout, which I got a lot of questions about, it really comes down to really uncoupling time as money, that concept that is so fundamental to how we work and how we operate. So not an easy question, but how do you define work-life balance? What would an ideal work-life balance look like? And in your opinion, is it still possible to completely separate work and life? Does it need to be separate? Yeah, hard hitting. Yes, please. Let's go, Sarah.
Sorry, my mouse died at a perfect time.
Oh, no.
So I have been on a journey with myself about work-life balance for the past few years because I think it's a total fallacy. I don't think this great achievement of work-life balance can really happen with the way we see productivity in our lives, right? And for me, it's been a health journey in both mental and physical health, and finding that I'm the type of person that works so hard because it's how I define my value. I don't have children, I'm happily married, but my work is my product for the world almost, right? And how I impact people's lives, especially as someone who leads a large team. So for me, it was taking the time and stepping back and saying, what is my definition of work life? So for me, it's the ability to be flexible when I have to. I also, to your point about burnout, I had to listen to myself and do some introspective work and decide, what does burnout even look like for me? So, I say all this to say, I don't even think we give ourselves space to have those types of internal dialogue and things like that on a regular basis. So it, again, is a perpetual cycle.
Such great call outs there. And like having to define it and really ask, what does it mean for me, is like such an important, it's personal. It's very, very unique for everybody. Choi, go for it.
Awesome. I think the lines, I will agree. I think the lines are blurred a little bit now. I've been working remote since 2018, but I think it's growing, and Celeste mentioned in the book about, you know, how your home has become your office now. Not everyone was used to that environment. Again, going back to my upbringing, there was a concept called telecommute, and this was an opportunity to get you away from the office so that you could, you know, just kind of relax and get into work without taking that drive. I feel rush hour traffic's 24/7 now because you can't get away from your office. Even if you are going to an office, it's crazy. But I feel like that separation, it's not even work life, it's like that home and office thing now. I purposely moved into a room that has a door now. I wish I could put a time lock on it so it won't let me in after a period of time. But I feel like things have grown closer together. The availability, the connectivity, the convenience, everything on your phone. It is really hard to separate the two.
Absolutely. The idea of meeting a door, the way that a door could literally completely transform like work and life, and just having that physical barrier is also just so interesting. Karina, go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to share my perspective on this because I definitely think that it's very difficult to even think of the word balance when I think about work and life. I think there are times where it's all work, and there are times where it's life, and hoping that I can demonstrate this in the best way possible with my sons. And I bring that up because there are times where my older son especially, he will call me out on things, and he will say, "Mom, you're working so much. Is this what you want? Is this how you're happy?" And in a sense, I'm thinking, how am I role modeling um, this whole concept of or idea of, work life, and how will he be picking this up, and will he be negative towards putting in the long hours because he sees that being reflected on me and how much work there is. This book has made me think a whole lot, even like my background as well, as far as like having migrated to this country as well, right, and have carrying that with me, as far as like I have to work hard to prove that I can be successful. And another thing that he's picked up on is like, it is difficult to be son of an immigrant, because I can see you how much effort you put into working because you moved here to be successful. And anyway, without getting into all of that, I just think this is just such a difficult thing to manage, right? But what I try to say to them, and what I try to do is, when I do have that free time, I tell them, right, this is your time as well. This is our time, and making it very, very explicit that at that moment I am not thinking about work. Somehow I try to make it work, right? Make it life a good life for all of us at home.
Yeah, I have so much resonance as the child of immigrants to like kind of speak to just the cultural understanding there, but also I love the ways that you talk about influence. Our own relationships with work don't just stop with us as managers, as parents, as teachers. We influence the folks around us as well. And people are learning from our role modeling. And so that pressure to kind of, how do I fix myself when I can barely kind of stay on top? I'm still treading water is a lot. Also, earlier, Sarah, I think you brought up the concept of work-life balance being a golden achievement almost. We kind of hold that above our heads that we should be this way, that we should be having that kind of as a gold star to show that we're on top of our shit. But that's not always how that turns out, especially if you're trying to push at all cylinders. So the last and final one is the joy of idleness. Idleness in this view is not inactivity. Idleness is really time in which one is not actively pursuing a profitable goal. It means you are at leisure. There is considerable scientific research demonstrating that idleness is good for you. And through her research, she points out a bunch of kind of key wins that you can get from idleness. I just listed them out here. It drives innovation. Boredom drives innovation. It protects your health. It actually makes you more effective at work. It allows for healing, trauma recovery, all that kind of space that you need to rest and recover and increase creativity. And so I want to ask, like, what did idleness mean to you before reading this book? And has it changed? How can you embrace more idleness in your life? I can take 2 or 3 and then we'll move on to kind of the next activity. But yes, I also thank you for being so engaged. Not all the groups are always that engaged. You guys are just right on top of it. Faye, go for it.
Yeah, I have a habit every Sunday afternoon because we have a balcony here at home where I just play music and then do some introspection. I particularly love portion where efficiency and productivity are actually counterintuitive to intimacy and building relationships, because you can't actually do introspection when you're too fast, doing everything. So that's something that I've tried to do as much as possible, carve time, because it meant that I get to actually dig deep into what happened to me and process all of my emotions, whether at work or outside of it, just so that I can make sense out of things and build my emotional toolkit, so to speak, or muscle.
I love that. We all could use a balcony with some awesome jams and hopefully some sunlight. That's fantastic. Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, so this is interesting because my partner and I feel like are like very much opposed to the idea of idleness, and that's where like a lot of the contention comes into play. I very much am someone who benefits from being idle and enjoying leisure time, and I like to do things just for the sake of like doing them and enjoying them. And my partner, on the other hand, is like very much like, no, we have this free time. We need to get this, and this done before we have to go back to work because we only have so much time and it needs to get done. And so we're like constantly balancing these two things within our household. But I will say one thing that has helped me embrace more idleness in my day is, we have the luxury of having space in a yard, and we just got chickens about 8 weeks ago. And I don't know if anyone's ever spent time with chickens, but they are so entertaining and so calming. And so I will just take my coffee out there in the morning and just sit in a chair and watch them roam around. And it has become like literally the favorite part of my day. If I'm feeling stressed, I'm like, I got to go sit with the chickens for a little bit. Like that's literally what I did last night.
Yeah, if the chickens are okay, then you're okay. I love that you have this little outlet and piece of paradise right in your yard. That's beautiful. Sarah, go for it.
So, Sarah, you inspired me to talk because I am like your partner, and that's my time is planned and there's always more to do. So for me, a book like this was very eye-opening because there's a certain amount of value that I tie to productivity. And the idea of being idle takes away productivity for me. So I'm actually one of those people that when people say, what's your hobby? I have a very hard time telling you what my hobbies are because everything I do, I consider productive. So the core of my issue is once again that I'm tying my time to the necessity of productivity. So being idle is something I don't know how to do. Like this is not a trained, this is a trained skill for me, right? I don't intuitively like sit back unless I take an edible. Like truly, that's for me, it's edible induced is when I'm idle. Really glad this is recorded. I live in New Mexico where it's legal. But I like that's like a whole bunch of like soul searching, right? You've got to figure out if you're not tying yourself to productivity and you're allowing yourself to embrace idleness, like once again, in my twisted head, I like hearing all of the ways that idleness helps me eventually be more productive. Like that, it all comes back to productivity for me.
I think that self-awareness and the bravery of just admitting that to both this group of strangers and also to yourself is so powerful. So thank you first off for sharing. I am so similar to you. It scares me. And literally before this book club, I got so nervous because we do 5 sessions in a day and you are all very important, cool people. I just took an edible, sedated myself and just watched as much Netflix as I could consume. And sometimes you just need to close all tabs in your brain and just shut down whatever helps you get there. But I think yes, and actually, it's a perfect transition to our next kind of topic. Sorry if anybody was planning to raise their hand. It's not as simple as go take a bubble bath. You'll cure your fundamental kind of problem with idleness. There is a lot of hard work that needs to happen. So let's try to do a little exercise that might crack open the door and give you some help with that. This is called the Limiting Belief Workshop. Has anybody done limiting belief work or heard of that before? Some head shakes, some nods. Okay, so some familiarity, some not. No worries. We'll start with the fundamentals. Limiting beliefs, those are the dark shadows of your brain that basically stick around. They can be due to some childhood interaction or maybe something you picked up along the way. Somehow you have this belief. Let's take the example of I'm not good enough. And when you repeat that to yourself and find evidence for it and constantly cycle on that, it stops you from pursuing stuff that you want, prevents you from seeing opportunities, it narrows your scope of vision, and it keeps you from appreciating your own talents, strengths, and self-worth. And we carry these limiting beliefs. They really become fundamental parts of how we see ourselves, our identity, our behaviors, and they translate to everything else. So we're going to try to do some heart work here and present you with a scenario. You're going to go into a breakout room with one person. That is not recorded. I have no idea what is discussed in those breakout rooms, but you're going to discuss what is your limiting belief about being productive. An example, if I work more hours, I'll get more done. Or another example brought up earlier today, there's an end to the to-do list. If I work hard enough, I could actually get all the stuff done and it will be done forever and I won't be busy anymore. So what is your limiting belief? Discuss it with your partner. You'll get to know this partner over the next kind of scenario that we discuss as well. We're giving folks 5 minutes for sake of time to make room for that manager roundtable, and we'll send you off and you get to meet somebody cool from this group. So fantastic. And
These are open. You will get a 1-minute reminder when they're closed.
awesome. Hello, how was the session and stuff? Helpful at all?
Good.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I do feel a little bit like we're forcing everybody to participate in communal therapy, but hopefully there's some value to it. Amazing. So we're just gonna wait for the group to close. Any like big takeaways, realizations? Like, do not feel any like pressure to expose stuff that you don't feel like sharing. Amazing. Okay, quick show of thumbs. How was that? Was it positive? Yeah, pretty good. Okay, fantastic. The rest of the folks should be showing up right now. Okay, amazing. How was that? Quick show of thumbs. Were we able to get any big realization? Okay, cool. So we're gonna throw you in there in just a second and stuff. The one thing that we're changing with this instead of the other ones, before I'd ask you to share, but we're realizing timing wise, it might make more sense to just throw you into the second. For the second scenario, I think it would be best to try to see how you can talk about it, but also reframe it. So if you could identify a limiting belief, try to reframe it for yourself in a way that's positive so you can almost counter that. And whenever you have it appear in your head, try to offer the counter. So if I'm not enough is the example, then I am enough is the counter. In the second scenario, we're going to talk about your limiting belief about leisure or idleness. Again, try to reframe it if you can. One example of this is when I relax, I'm being lazy and procrastinating. A reframe is when I'm relaxed, rest is revolutionary. I am investing in my overall well-being. I am taking care of myself. So, okay, great. You're going to meet the same person that you met, and we'll throw you right back into those rooms.
I think somebody dropped out, so one group will have 3 people in it. Do not panic, it is intentional.
Okay, cool. Okay, fantastic. So everybody should be piling in. Hello, you missed a very fruitful discussion Monica and I were having on communism, so maybe watch the recording for that. But yeah, I wanted to give a quick little shout out. If somebody wanted to share and reflect on just something that they discovered through that breakout room conversation, feel free. Also, cone of silence. We can kind of edit the recording and doctor it and stuff, but like this pretty much stays if it's personal. So yeah, anybody want to share stuff? Otherwise, we can hop to the round table. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, for me, the eye-opening part is, and this was also mentioned in the earlier part, is our family cycles, our family habits. So for the first one is, if I'm not productive, because I came from a working class, and I thought that if I'm not productive, I don't get to build my professional currency. And that's been haunting me for a while because there's financial insecurity. Since again, there's no generational wealth, there's no business, there's nothing but me. And I'm the eldest child in an Asian household. So you could just imagine it's a lot, like a lot of things happening. So yeah, I mean, that's like a light bulb moment for me earlier.
I'm so glad that you got that realization out of that. And obviously this work does not stop here with one conversation. It's constant, it's reflective, it's going to therapy and chatting about this, but that's how we break cycles of burnout and overwork. It's not the most fun, sexy as taking a champagne bubble bath, but you get it. Anybody else want to share? Otherwise, we'll go to roundtables. if there's something, leave it in the chat and we can kind of come back to it. This is now the section for manager roundtables. For the next about 10, 15-ish minutes, you can basically raise a problem that you're facing, something to do with the book or nothing to do with it at all. There are other customer first leaders here. So poll the group, folks, raise your hand if you have answers for the person. We can also switch to the next question, but this is your time. So go for it. Yeah, please. Go ahead, Janella.
This is a struggle for me. I used to have at one point a group of 30 underneath me, right? And then we've restructured, now it's just a handful. How do you, and I'm really interested in the different perspectives because, we're all different people. How do you get people to not work as hard, right? I mean, everyone is a super overachiever, it needs to have that work-life balance, and you see them killing themselves, literally, and you're like, stop, don't do it. Like, this is not worth it. What are other methods to do that? Because sometimes, they just don't hear you. And I used to be that person, right? Who I wouldn't hear it, but, what methods have you folks used with your reports as well, or colleagues that you've, been wanting to say, hey, get off the crazy train, this job is killing you. You need to maybe not care as much, but, I know sometimes you can't just say it. Like, what are methods that you folks have used?
Great question for the perfect group. Go ahead, Sarah. Take it away.
So my team is in a similar mind frame, right? So UKG is two large companies merged together 3 years ago. We're still figuring that merger out. So restructure is literally day in the life of every employee at UKG today. So something that I've done, instead of just saying, so we have an open PTO policy, myself and the leaders under me, I'm very intentional with my words regarding our PTO policy because people don't typically take PTO if you have an unlimited PTO policy. So that's the first thing I do. I also am very fortunate that UKG does have a lot of employee-focused resources that I can pass along to my team, right? So things like mental wellness lines and different like training resources for them to get to the root cause of why they experience burnout or overwork. I don't think as a leader, it's something you can answer for them. I think it's something that you empower people to figure out on their own because it is a very personal journey. So for me, that's been incredibly effective. And I still have those people that I have a close relationship with that I tell them, I noticed you haven't taken PTO for a few months. You need to take a few days. And knowing that at my level, I'm still dialed into what they do, I think is incredibly important as well.
Great tip. I saw a few hands and I'm having attention issues. So yeah, Sarah will go next. And Troy, did you have your hand up? Did you want to go next? Go for it. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, definitely like calling out. So in all of my team meetings, like all team meetings that I have with my team, we have a space for upcoming PTO, and like I'll specifically call out like, hey, like no one's put in like any upcoming PTO in our upcoming PTO line item on our agenda. If you don't have any PTO coming up, like talk with your director and make that happen. And then the other thing, like, and honestly, I think the biggest thing is just modeling the behavior. I had an amazing mentor and manager for a number of years who just was adamant about certain parameters around her availability, and she would not budge on them no matter what. And it really told me that like I should have really strong boundaries between my work and the needs of my personal life and my health. And that's something that I try to model for my team as well.
Love that so much. Troy, go for it.
Yeah, Sarah, thanks for sharing that. Well, both Sarahs, thanks for sharing that. I'll just piggyback. The first, Sarah, we have kind of flattened our org chart a little bit too. In some cases, we were restructuring. And part of that structure was setting some of those boundaries and expectations for the team. So one of the things that we did is we gave everybody a buddy in a way, like you have a backup. And we do a lot of live interaction. So when you're supposed to be on live, you got to have a backup because life happens. And so we kind of developed a little bit of a buddy system, and it did take a little bit of, like, hey, look, you know what, I can't manage all of you effectively that way with PTO. I could, but let's help each other out. If someone's struggling, wake up, they're having a bad day, or they sound like Darth Vader, let's help out. So we created kind of a buddy system to check in. So it's an extension of me in a way. They're like, hey, this is your first line of defense. If something's not right, we can't handle it here, then come to me. And immediately they kind of felt like they had a little bit of a safety net. And once I established kind of that buddy system, or that check-in system, PTO went up. And it really is, people taking vacation, they're like, I'm like, cool, awesome, share your picks, we got a break room. So I think kind of having an advocate or an ally, you just call them out, like, hey, this is your buddy. And if that fails, then come to me. And I'm not going to be your first person to, you don't have to answer to me right away, right? Like, don't disappoint Troy. Let's talk with Sarah and see if Sarah can cover for you a little bit, or what. So anyway, that's kind of what we created, and immediately started seeing PTO and MPS go up.
What I want to call out right there is just how difficult it can be to seek help in a remote environment, particularly. And I'm pretty sure CRC is remote. So having a designated buddy is brilliant, because it gives that person a designated person to bother. They don't feel like they're being a bother because it's their job to go bother this person. That's so smart. Stacy, go for it.
I think one thing that's helped is, like, a lot of times, especially customer facing roles, people want to help each other and support customers. So I think a lot of people will try to fill in the gaps. If there's always more work to be done than there are people, almost always, right? So I think one thing I've had to do is, like, make sure people know that, like, it's not their responsibility to pick up that slack. If we're always picking up the slack by pushing ourselves too much, I can't show to leadership, my boss, that, hey, we have way more work than we have people to do it, and because we're covering that up. And I think that is a mindset shift that I've had to have for a couple teams. It's like, hey, it's okay if we don't meet our first reply time. If we're working our 40 hours, we're doing we're doing, what's expected of us. If we're making that up by working more hours or pushing ourselves too far within the allotted hours, then that's not serving anybody. It's not serving the business. It's not serving you as individuals, our team. It's not serving our customers, because that's not sustainable.
These responses are brilliant. Thank you all for giving such awesome stuff. Sunny, go for it.
I loved that you brought up, Stacey, the bridge that a people manager is for the people to the business and its operations. I think some upfront things that I have that help nurture what you just mentioned is setting your intentions up front with the people that you are managing. What are your priorities as a manager? Is their well-being a priority? And if so, communicating that to them so that whenever you meet with them, you are constantly checking in on that, and they know why, because that is a priority for you as a manager. And then also establishing feedback languages. Managing a global team, you have so many different languages, and many of the team's first language is not English. And so establishing a feedback language such as, do you prefer verbal in a meeting, or do you prefer time to process? So maybe written via email, you have time to process, and then we can circle in so that you can give feedback, like Sarah was saying earlier, whenever someone isn't taking any time off, but it's delivered in a way that they truly are open and receiving it. So 100%, I think those are just two little things that would support, again, like Stacy mentioned, us as people managers, as we're nurturing the well-beings of our people, then also escalating, here are the challenges that my team is experiencing that is preventing them from taking time off. And your higher ups and your leadership should also know that you prioritize the well-being of your team over response time and any other operational KPIs and goals.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sunny. That was amazing. Well, hopefully, Janella, you got some answers to your question right there. And thank you for all of you for giving such awesome answers. answers, not questions. If you have any questions, please, we have time for one more and we can get some answers to that as well. Sunny, did you have a question or was it the leftover? Okay, no worries. Yeah, Sarah, go for it.
So less of a question and more of something that I implemented from this book that's already driving forward in a direction that I'm excited about. So because I am so intentional with productivity, my team literally we have a template for one-on-ones, right? And I know exactly what we're going to talk about, and we all talk in the same language. It keeps us very efficient. Well, for the past like 3 weeks, I've been also scheduling time with my team where we have no agenda and we just talk about what's important to them. And it was exciting because I just got off one of these one-on-ones before this call, and literally it was scheduled for an hour. We talked for an hour and 15 minutes. By the way, it's caused me to also be reflective and flexible with my time. But, a member of my team's like opening up her heart to me. And it reminded me of the scenario that Celeste talked about with the kid on the escalator going through Atlanta Airport, which used to be my hometown airport, and just allowing this child to take in this really cool jungle art installation, which is amazing. And if you're ever in Atlanta, definitely do it. But it just really like validated for me that it is important to allow people to have space to process and come to their own like profound conclusions. And for her, it was all about exactly what we're talking about, and herself tying her productivity to her worth and not feeling like she could talk to me about her, what I call professional love language, right? How do you receive praise at work? So I don't know. It's something that's already working for me, and just, I loved it. So I wanted to share.
I'm so glad. That makes me so, so happy. Thank you for sharing that win. It's huge. Troy, go for it.
First of all, I am going to implement that like a no agenda one-to-one. That would be awesome and refreshing. I just want to share we did something similar, but not on a one-to-one level. We had a virtual team luncheon, and one of the rules was no shop talk. And so there were only 2 rules. The first rule was, I'm going to give everyone your ramp card so you can get delivered however you get there, but the food has to show up in the lunch. We're eating lunch together. And the second rule was no shop talk. And it was that 1 hour session. First of all, we went over a few minutes too. It was that 1 hour. I got to learn more about my team than I had ever had in a one-to-one. So I think it just kind of piggybacks on what you're talking about, Sarah. Just allow that unstructured space to organically happen. And, I was like, hey, look, no shop talk. We're just whatever you want to talk about the food you got, whatever. It was awesome. So just want to piggyback, but I'm definitely going to do that kind of no brainer one-to-one. Let's just hash it out. Make it their one-to-one. What do you want to talk about? I love that.
Okay, I'm not sure if we have time for another question, so I'm just going to share my screen really quick and make sure that I throw all the resources that are available to you to help you get the most out of book club. So next week we are meeting up with Celeste Headlee, which is fantastic. She's going to jump on for 15-minute Q&A at the very end of the session. We'll be talking about part 2, which is a lot more actionable and goes into how we can actually start to do nothing. So please don't miss it. It's on the 23rd. You should have gotten an invite, but if you don't, vigorously email me and I will vigorously put you into the book club. Other things, Book Club Hub is available to you, so please go check it out. I have the link over here. I'll figure out how to toss it into the chat, which I'm doing right now, and just go through. You can add everybody on LinkedIn, go through the club directory, sort it by customer first leaders, and you'll find all your names listed out here. Please don't let these relationships fizzle out. It can be so hard to meet folks, especially in remote kind of teams. So make some friendships, connect with folks, and meet up outside of this book club. I implore you. And other things, we have resources for you. You can always use Kona for free. It's an available resource as well. I'm offering well-being workshops throughout Mental Health Awareness Month. So if this is a priority for your team and you're like, we have folks that are burning out, I'm happy to help and happy to chat. And finally, thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you for reading. Thank you for really putting in so much. This book club is nothing without your efforts and considerations and just thoughtfulness. So thank you for being vulnerable and showing up and doing the hard work with us. And I will see you next week. Super excited. And thank you for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Y'all are the best. Bye.
Thanks,